on Wolfpack, I hope you're all having a fantastic day out there. You're very welcome to episode 4 of Degenerates of the Week. Thank you very much for joining me. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at clips from Florida, Georgia and the Lone Star State, which of course is Texas. For our first clip we're going to belt up and hop in with the Florida Highway Patrol as they chase a stolen Maserati in Dade County. This is dashcam footage released in January by the Florida Highway Patrol. It shows a chase which happened back on the 27th of December 2023 involving a stolen Maserati. The vehicle we're going to be viewing the chase from is that of a canine trooper who was involved. According to the Florida Highway Patrol, troopers had tried to stop the stolen Maserati in the area of Northwest 19th Avenue and Miami Gardens Drive when the suspect fled, leading authorities on this pursuit. But as is to be expected, this Maserati madman won't get too far. And as you've seen there, he was absolutely herring down some residential streets. And as per usual with these stolen car chases, the criminal has absolute disregard for anyone else's safety. I think maybe these criminals should start being charged with public endangerment when they lead police on pursuits like this.
Possible 31 appeal. 1031 of a black sedan, signal 12, Miami Gardens, passing 14. Possible 31 appeal, Miami Gardens, signal 13. Clear left.
Some absolutely ridiculous speeds being hit here, especially for the type of streets. With so many intersections and traffic lights on this stretch of road, I'm surprised there hasn't been a collision yet.
12 Avenue, 183 eastbound, 12 Southbound 8,000, Northwest 183rd.
And here we are back down some more narrow residential streets. My heart does be up in my throat when they're hammering down a residential area. I'm just thinking that kids may be out playing in the streets, unaware of the danger that's coming. There's no way this guy or the officers are stopping if a kid runs out in front of them.
10-4, just signal 14, possible 32 on appeal on Miami Gardens. Signal 12, signal 12.
10-4, 32 on appeal for Miami Gardens, signal 12. Station 46.
7th and 178. Southbound on 7 and 178.
I don't know what the specs are on this Maserati, but I'm pretty sure it has some power in it, and even though he's driving at high speed and quite recklessly, this officer here is doing a great job at keeping up with him.
Signal 14.
Black Maserati, 10-5.
Signal 12. Signal 12. 10-4, getting on 826. Getting on 826.
10-4, what direction of travel?
U-turn, he's doing U-turn. Cantor, back to you, coming back to you, Cantor. Head on with a Miami Gardens officer, head on with a Miami Gardens officer.
A wrong turn there for our suspect, leading him straight into a head-on collision with an unmarked Miami Gardens police vehicle. The suspect was identified as 22-year-old Rodrigo Jose Perez. It turns out that Mr. Perez was actually armed with a handgun which he threw onto the floorboard of the car. I'm presuming this was when he crashed into that police vehicle and realised he was going to get busted. Or maybe perhaps he thought he'd have enough time to make an escape on foot, but there were too many officers on him too quickly and he was overwhelmed in seconds, pulled out of the car and arrested swiftly. Perez was arrested on charges including fleeing and eluding police, aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer and possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. That obviously explains why he was trying to ditch the handgun. I was unable to find out any additional information about Mr. Perez about what his previous convictions were or what actually happened in this case. But hopefully a judge didn't look too kindly on his disregard for public safety and gave him some time away to contemplate his actions. As for the poor Maserati owner, well, I'm pretty sure that Maserati is now going to be a write-off. But hopefully the owner can find some solace in the fact that this guy didn't get away with it. In last week's episode of Degenerates of the Week, which was episode number 3, we travelled over to Atlanta to take a look at an epic foot chase. And it seems like a case of deja vu because here we are again this week, back in Atlanta, where another armed narcotics peddler is trying to flee from police, gaining absolutely nothing for himself, only more charges. When will they ever learn? On September 16th last year at approximately 6:09 PM, officers observed a suspicious vehicle backed into a parking spot reserved for City of Atlanta vehicles at 300 Peachtree Street Northeast. Residents and business owners in the area had notified police about potential drug transactions occurring near that location.
Last man. Drop it.
Why they always gotta run?
He got a gun! He got a gun! He got a gun! He got a gun! Hey, get your hands out of your pants!
Back up on the scene pretty quickly it seems, and I'm loving the multiple video angles. Thankfully the officer managed to block their car into the parking spot because who knows, this may have turned into a vehicle pursuit. With some officers hot on his tail and now a number of vehicles involved, this guy's not going to get too far. You can see the suspect ditches his hat here in a vain attempt to try and make himself more aerodynamic and lightweight. Some quick thinking by this officer to head the suspect off using the police vehicle.
Get on the ground! We got it! Calm down! Everybody calm down!
Radio 69 recovered.
I keep my money, bro, at least.
Oh, damn.
That's not dope, bro.
I'm gonna charge you. You can keep nothing.
That's just a fact, sir. You can't keep anything, not your stolen gun, nor those narcotics that they just recovered from your person. Of course, he's in denial about them being drugs, a tactic straight out of the Degenerate handbook. The weapon recovered was a Glock 19 and was stolen out of DeKalb County. Officers also recovered over 30 grams of marijuana and 7 grams of ecstasy from the suspect. The suspect was identified as 23-year-old Gustavus Johnson. And Mr. Johnson was charged with a litany of offences such as possession of a firearm by a first offender probationer, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, theft by receiving stolen property, which is a felony, willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer, purchase, possession, manufacture, distribution or sale of marijuana, purchase, possession, manufacture, distribution or sale of a Schedule 1 narcotic. Quite the rap sheet there, and the only thing achieved out of this is gaining himself the title of a felon. An unusual news story that caught my eye recently was that of a California man named Michael Hart. Mr. Hart has become the first person in the United States charged with illegally smuggling greenhouse gases into the country. Mr. Hart of San Diego was arrested under the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act of 2020, which prohibits the importation of hydrofluorocarbons or HFCs without proper permits from the Environmental Protection Agency. HFCs are potent greenhouse gases commonly found in refrigerators and air conditioners, building insulation, fire extinguishing systems and aerosols. These gases can be anywhere from hundreds to thousands of times more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. According to the Department of Justice, Mr. Hart purchased refrigerants in Mexico and smuggled them into the United States in his vehicle, hidden under a tarp and some tools. He was selling them on for a profit, having posted the items on OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace among other sites. The illegal smuggling of hydrofluorocarbons undermines international efforts to combat climate change under the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, said David Ullman of the EPA, referring to the agreement which the United States, along with most other countries, has signed. It calls to phase out super pollutants by 80 to 85% by 2047. It's also alleged that Mr. Hart imported HCFC-22, an ozone depleting substance regulated under the Clean Air Act. Mr. Hart has been charged with 1 count of conspiracy, 5 counts of importation contrary to law and 7 counts of sale of merchandise imported contrary to law. He has pleaded not guilty to all 13 counts. Quite an unusual case there, guys, so it'll be interesting to see how this one pans out. And this man could well go down in the history books, albeit for the wrong reasons. Next up, we're off to the Lone Star State, which of course is Texas, but more specifically to Fort Worth and the 6400 block of McCart Avenue. We're going to take a look at a robbery that happened to a 24-hour vape store called Vape City back in January of this year. On the 7th of January this year at around 4 AM in the morning, armed with a crowbar and a cardboard box, 37-year-old Walker Cad decided he would get himself some discount vapes, but almost got himself smoked in the process. So here's some CCTV footage of the robbery. We can see Mr. Cad here approaching the store outside. He's wearing a face mask and armed with a cardboard box and a crowbar. Mr. Cad here going for the old smash and grab, although in quite a relaxed fashion. I suppose it is 4 AM, he's probably tired after having a productive day. So Mr. Cad was on his way out the door and the staff were on the phone to 911. So let's take a listen to the audio of that call.
Forward Police Department operator 139, what's the location you're calling about? Is this a house, apartment, or business?
It's a business. It's Vape City is the name.
Vape City, what's going on there?
Well, I'm one of the associates working, and we just had a guy come in with like a box in his hands and a crowbar, and he stole a bunch of nicotine juices, he stole some water pipes, and then he tried to shatter one of our cases with his crowbar, but he couldn't.
And you said he stole a couple of items?
Yeah, he stole a couple of things and broke some stuff, and then he just walked out and left, didn't say anything to me.
Okay, I do already have a caller for officers to respond out to that location. Aside from the crowbar, did he have any other weapons?
No, not that I could tell. I just saw a cardboard box and then a crowbar in his hand.
Okay. Have a call up for officers. They should be pulling up here shortly. I just want you to stay on the line with me until they arrive, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
The first responding officer on the scene arrived at about 4:03 AM. The officer observed the suspect running across a creek bed at the back of the store. He was headed towards a residential area just off West Creek Drive.
He's running across the creek. He's heading towards behind Back in America. Can somebody get over there quick? Somebody get over to the Bank of America. Black male carrying a 10 backpack.
The suspect then jumped a fence into the backyard of a residence on the 3200 block of Fargo Court. The officer directed additional units to the suspect's last known location and then relocated himself to that address that the suspect had entered the backyard of. When the officer arrived at the residence, he found the suspect hiding in a shed in the back garden. The officer immediately drew his weapon and started giving the suspect commands to show him his hands.
Show me your hands! Back here, the backyard of the red barn. Show me your hands! Show me your hands!
The suspect refused to comply with the officer's verbal commands and you can hear him saying no several times. The officer called out on the radio with his exact location so assistant officers could find him quickly.
Back here, the backyard of the red barn. Show me your hands! Show me your hands! I need a unit here, one house to the right of Fargo Court.
The suspect stood up and then began approaching the officer.
I'm gonna shoot you! Back up, yes! Back up!
The officer gave the suspect multiple warnings that he'd be shot if he didn't comply, to which the suspect ignored and kept advancing directly towards the officer. At this point, the suspect had come within arm's reach of the officer, to which the officer pushed the suspect back in order to create some distance between them.
Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
The suspect continued to ignore the officer's commands and exited the shed. He moved towards a large opening in the fence which would have gave him access to the neighbouring property and a chance to escape.
Back up! Back up!
In order to prevent the suspect's escape, the officer reached for him with his left hand in order to stop him. The suspect then turned towards the officer and started to reach for his gun. At this point, fearing that the suspect was going to take his weapon from him, the officer discharged 2 shots from his pistol, one striking the suspect in the leg. I'm not going to show that part of the incident for obvious reasons. Our last episode of Degenerates of the Week got age restricted, which absolutely killed its reach, so I'm hoping the same doesn't happen to this video. Shortly after the shots were fired, a backup officer arrived and both officers secured the suspect and provided medical attention. The suspect was then transported to a local hospital where he was treated and released later that day. No other injuries were reported. From the initial 911 call, officers knew that the suspect was armed with a crowbar. After officers backtracked the suspect's path, they found the crowbar had been discarded. The officer that confronted the suspect was unaware that the crowbar had been tossed aside and also didn't know if the suspect had any other weapons. Fort Worth's Chief of Police, Neil Noakes, said that the shooting took place when the officer felt like the suspect was trying to take his weapon. He went on to say that officers are trained not to let anyone take their gun because what often happens in situations like that is it can turn deadly for that officer or another innocent resident who may be nearby, and that is when the shooting actually occurred. The suspect, Walker Cadd, was arrested and charged with theft and attempting to take a weapon from a peace officer. He was booked into the Tarrant County Jail on bonds totaling $5,500. An investigation into the shooting is ongoing and being conducted by the Fort Worth Police Department's major case detectives. And we'll round off this incident with a final word from Fort Worth's Chief of Police, Neil Noakes.
We want the members of our community to know that even while they are at home sleeping, our Fort Worth police officers are working around the clock to keep you safe. They're responding to dangerous calls and apprehending those who might pose a threat to our community. No officer goes to work with a desire to harm anyone, but their commitment to protecting the public sometimes means confronting danger and making split-second decisions about how to protect themselves and others. We want you to know that your Fort Worth police officers will continue to answer their call to keep our city safe.
So as I said earlier, Mr. Cadd there trying to get himself some discount vapes but nearly getting himself smoked in the end. Yes, of course, I can't miss the opportunity to get in another pun. Definitely let me know what you guys thought of that one down below in the comments. But in my opinion, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. This guy was willing to almost get himself killed over some vapes. I don't think the man was that addicted to the vapes that he had to go in there and do that and put himself at such risk. I presume he was going to sell them on the streets in order to make some quick cash. And quick cash is what this guy needs right about now with $5,500 worth of a bond. Reports also stated that it wasn't clear if he had obtained an attorney to speak on his behalf. Let's just hope he doesn't try to represent himself like some of the sovereign citizens. He'll just make a bad situation even worse. Before we hop into our next segment, I'd like to ask you kindly, if you have been enjoying this video so far, please do drop us a like, as it does really help the channel out and is very much thoroughly appreciated. If you like what we do here and you'd like to support the channel, why not consider becoming a channel member? You can find out more information at the link down below in the description or by hitting the little join button down below this video. You can also head over to our store and pick yourself up some Degenerate Watch merch, or you can hit that little heart button down below the video to drop us a super thanks. The next clip we're going to take a look at has been in the archives for quite some time, and I came across it recently and decided I'd throw it into one of these episodes. It's a great example of why you should mind your own business and not draw unnecessary attention towards yourself, especially if at the time of drawing said attention to yourself you're currently committing a number of offences. I'm pretty sure the guy in this clip wishes he had took that advice.
Watching a driver stop right smack in the middle of Highway 101 at the Golden Gate Bridge is not something one would expect to see. But if you hang out at the Golden Gate Bridge toll plaza in San Francisco long enough, there are a few things you might not expect to see. Like this motorcyclist missing his exit and going down the wrong way instead. Now, normally that story would end here, except...
Why'd you get off your bike and come way over here for?
He ran 50 yards across 2 lanes of traffic to ask, why am I filming him?
I'm at Channel 4, you just went down the wrong road there.
Yeah, I know, I couldn't stop fast enough.
So was that an admission that you were speeding, sir? Or at the very least, not paying attention?
He apparently didn't like my answer.
Why are you coming over here?
Because you're filming
here,
me.
Sir, go back to where you were.
Filming me.
Go back to where you were, please.
Let me see some ID.
Now, I'm not required to show ID, but to defuse the situation, I did.
I don't know you.
Luckily he was showing ID there, or he'd be still confused about whether he knew the man or not. What's he like anyway, coming up demanding ID? He's holding his helmet up there to hide his face, but like, if he had just kept on going and minding his own business, we wouldn't even know who the man was.
That doesn't matter if you don't know.
So don't stick your camera in people's faces,
You came to me.
Yeah, because you're sticking a camera in my face.
You came to me.
All right.
Well, if that man thinks they were sticking a camera in his face from that distance, well then I'm very worried for him. I just don't get people like this guy. If you have a big problem with being recorded, then why approach the camera? I'm not quite sure what this guy's issue is. Maybe it's the fact that he feels he may have been caught making that turn. Or he could simply be just wrapped up in his own sense of self-importance.
As he's walking away, he decides he's not finished with me yet.
Because it's rude when you stick camera in people's faces without their authorization, you punk-ass inconsiderate mother.
Oh yeah, cause that makes sense. Lecture the man about being rude, then proceed to verbally abuse him. So on top of being a whinge bag, this guy is also a hypocrite. Thinking before you speak or act is so underrated, guys.
Have a good day, sir.
Self.
I'll try, but it might be kind of hard.
Well, get your boyfriend to do it for you.
Now, it's important to note that for every action, there is a reaction. The reaction is the motorcyclist's rant was being watched by another camera, the one in this building. So the Golden Gate Bridge Patrol quickly caught up with him, who in turn called the California Highway Patrol, who after watching the video, the driver was issued a ticket for
coming down on the on-ramp, using it as an exit, okay? No insurance, okay? You're driving on a suspended license, okay? You're also impounding your motorcycle for 30 days.
The moral of the story here is, if you're committing offences yourself, then maybe you should stick to the rules of the road and also not draw unnecessary attention towards yourself. This kind of reminds me of those times when you see guys getting pulled in for something like maybe speeding a couple of miles an hour over the speed limit, or having a broken tail light and ended up getting busted for something way bigger. And what did this gentleman here get out of stopping to take his ego for a walk? Well, absolutely nothing, except him having to walk himself home. Just think of how much easier it would have been for him if he had just kept going and minded his own business. Let's just hope he's learned a lesson here. Well guys, that's just about all we have time for this episode of Degenerates of the Week. I do thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you'll join me next week for episode number 5. Don't forget to drop us a like and also drop a comment with your thoughts down below, and I'll get back to as many people as I possibly can. I want to take this opportunity to give a massive shout out to the crew of legends that are my channel members. Thank you guys as always for your continued support and encouragement. It is very much thoroughly appreciated. And also a big shout out to everyone that's watching this with me on the premiere. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. If you haven't seen the other episodes of Degenerates of the Week yet, I'll leave a link to those down below in the description, so check those out after this episode. As always, I'll be back in the next couple of days with another video. I do hope you'll join me then, but until then, please do check out some of the videos that should be appearing on screen now. Until next time guys, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and as always, stay safe, take care, peace.